The United States, Canada, and Australia once moved like three close brothers. They stood shoulder to shoulder in war, they traded across oceans, they even shared intelligence in secret, but now one of those brothers has quietly stepped away from the table. Australia didn't simply reject Donald Trump's newest demands. They didn't just brush off his warnings. They made a far more consequential move. They picked up the phone and called Mark Carney, and it wasn't a casual conversation. They invited the Canadian Prime Minister to address their parliament, an honor typically reserved for the President of the United States. Trump tried to corner Canada. He attempted to pressure Ottawa into submission. Carney, however, didn't flinch. Instead, he reached across the Pacific, and now the fallout is crashing into the White House with full force. In the next few minutes, I'll break down how this partnership fractured, why Trump suddenly appears isolated on the global stage, and why Australia's decision could affect your wallet if you're holding US dollars. This isn't routine diplomacy, it's a geopolitical shift unfolding in real time. So what happened? Early this morning, the Australian Prime Minister's office released a statement that blindsided Washington. They announced that Mark Carney will travel to Australia next week to deliver a landmark joint address to Parliament. And protocol matters here. You don't invite a foreign leader to speak before your government unless you're sending a powerful message. Traditionally, an Australian leader's first call is to the US president. The first major visit is a handshake in the Oval Office. Not this time. This time, Australia examined the turmoil emanating from Trump's White House, the tariff threats, the unpredictable messaging, the loyalty demands, and compared it to Carney's steady, strategic leadership in Canada. They made a choice. They chose stability. This invitation signals a clear rejection of Trump's America First posture. Behind closed doors, Trump's team had reportedly been pressing Australia hard. They wanted Canberra to support the trade offensive against Canada. They hoped to form a united front to force Carney to concede. Instead, Australia aligned with Canada. That's a shock because Australia has long been viewed as America's most dependable ally in the Pacific. If Trump can't keep Australia aligned, then his grip on the English-speaking alliance is slipping. Carney's visit will focus on resource security and middle power cooperation. In plain terms, he's working to shape an economic system that doesn't require Donald Trump's approval. And the White House is furious. You might think leaders visit each other all the time, but timing tells the real story. When you examine the sequence of events, it becomes clear this was deliberate. First, consider AUKUS, the major submarine agreement between the US, the UK, and Australia. It's been a pillar of American influence in the Pacific. Trump has hinted at freezing the deal unless Australia increases its financial commitment. He believed that leverage kept them boxed in. Yet today's Australian statement didn't even mention the United States. Instead, it highlighted Commonwealth cooperation, critical minerals, and strategic alignment with Canada. That omission speaks volumes. By inviting Carney, Australia is signaling it has alternatives. If the submarine deal collapses, they won't plead. They'll pivot and pivot toward economic competence. Next, look at trade dynamics. Trump has floated universal tariffs, including on allies. He frames it as strength. Markets see instability. After news of Carney's visit surfaced, the Australian dollar strengthened against the US dollar. Investors dislike unpredictability. Trump represents volatility. Carney projects steadiness. A Canada-Australia resource partnership controlling significant shares of uranium, lithium, and gold looks safer than an erratic trade environment. Capital is shifting towards stability. That's not rhetoric, that's market behavior. Then there's Trump's reaction. Within hours of the announcement, he posted criticism rather than congratulations. He accused Australia of freeloading and Canada of dishonesty. He labeled the Australian Prime Minister weak and hinted at reviewing military cooperation. That isn't the posture of a leader fully in command. It's the response of someone who feels excluded. When a president resorts to insults toward close allies, it signals diminished leverage. Reports suggest U.S. diplomats urged Australia to delay the invitation. Australia proceeded anyway. That's telling. Once fear dissipates, influence fades with it. Why is this happening? Trump views global politics as a series of one-on-one transactions. Pressure Canada today. Pressure Australia tomorrow, pressure Europe next. He assumes each stands alone, but the spokes of the wheel can connect. His approach depends on isolation. Yet every time tariffs rise or threats escalate, allies search for alternatives. Canada reached out to Europe. NATO members discussed strengthening independent defense capabilities. Australia called Carney. Instead of obedience, Trump's tactics are producing fragmentation. He's driving partners closer together. Leadership builds coalitions. Bluster fractures them. Real power is when allies answer your call. Increasingly, they hesitate. Australia calculated the risks. Angering Trump carries consequences. But depending on him may carry greater ones, so they adjusted course. And once one ally shifts, others may follow. Now consider Carney's strategy. Rather than engage in public sparring, he focused on building networks. In the modern era, influence isn't just about aircraft carriers. It's about supply chains, rare minerals, and trade rules. Canada and Australia together control substantial portions of essential resources like uranium, potash, lithium, and rare earth elements, materials vital for technology, defense systems, and clean energy. By strengthening ties, Carney is forming a resource bloc with global leverage. It's a quiet strategy, but effective. Trump demands allegiance. Carney offers reliability. Trump prioritizes dominance. Carney emphasizes partnership. That difference explains Australia's decision. This parliamentary address isn't symbolic, it's structural. They are exploring trade frameworks that reduce exposure to Washington's unpredictability. The most cutting blow to a volatile actor isn't confrontation, it's irrelevance. So what does this mean for you? For decades, the US dollar, US institutions, and U.S. stability underpinned global commerce. That reliability kept costs down and supply chains efficient. If countries like Canada and Australia begin structuring trade independently, especially in critical minerals, the cost of doing business in the U.S. could rise. Companies already hesitate to invest amid tariff uncertainty. Uncertainty functions like a tax. The more unpredictable the environment, the higher the hidden costs. There's also the question of trust. If Australia questions Washington's reliability, other allies may reassess too. A future where the U.S. stands more isolated would reshape global economics. Respect isn't intimidation, it's credibility. When allies meet without you, that credibility erodes. This morning's imagery captured the contrast. On one side, Trump at a rally, forceful and fiery. On the other, officials in Canberra exchanging a measured handshake. One seen loud and combative, the other procedural and calm. It illustrated two approaches, confrontation versus coordination. In today's climate, calm competence can be revolutionary. Where does this lead? There are three likely paths. First, Trump retaliates with tariffs or rhetoric that may only deepen Australia's shift. Second, other nations like the UK or Japan observe and potentially follow suit, expanding a broader alignment. Third, the most severe outcome, weaponizing military cooperation. That would strain long-standing alliances and carry global consequences. Whether restraint prevails remains uncertain. Canada and Australia appear unwilling to wait for U.S. policy to stabilize. They are adapting. This moment could mark a turning point in how the English-speaking world organizes itself. Carney arrives in Australia not merely as a visiting leader, but as a strategist shaping a new framework. Meanwhile, Trump confronts the limits of pressure politics. So the real question is this: is Carney safeguarding global stability or reshaping it in ways that diminish American influence? Or has that influence already been weakened from within? I want to hear your perspective. Is Australia justified in extending this invitation, or does it signal a fracture in alliance loyalty? Share your thoughts. And if you're interested in how this unfolds when Carney lands in Canberra and how Washington responds, stay tuned. This story is still developing and it's far from finished.